If you want to get yourself some cute new clothes or other cool stuff, please check out my Redbubble store, t-shirts, stickers, mousepads, mugs, etc, etc. Also, if you like some extra content from me, I'm also on Patreon. Links will be in the description box below. Thanks for checking it out. Hello everyone, long time no see. It's been a while. I've been struggling with finding motivation and inspiration lately. This whole year has just been a struggle, and that is why there have been a little less videos lately. Less than usual, but I finally felt the urge to create something, to make a video, but I couldn't really decide what to make, so I asked you guys what you wanted to see, and I got some really great suggestions. UL said cats, lots and lots of cats. I mean, that is something that I would do anyway, but it is always great to blame all the cats on someone else. Speaking of cats, Kathy said some PURRMAIDS, which are cats in mermaid form. It's perfect since it is May and the mermaid challenge is currently going on, so I think that would be fitting. And then Geeky Eva suggested something with Poscas. I love me some Posca art, but I did actually do a video a few years ago with Posca PURRMAIDS, so I want to make something a little different, so I also picked the suggestion from okay, bye. So I also picked a suggestion from Kosawi or Kosawi. They said that they would like to see me combining different mediums that I usually wouldn't use together, which I thought sounded very interesting because with Posca pens I usually don't use a lot of other art supplies, more than maybe like a fine liner or a brush pen to create some line work maybe. And something that I have actually wanted to try to combine Posca pens with is actually color pencils. So I've been doing a lot of digital art, and my digital art style is basically flat colors like Posca pens, and then I'm adding details with a textured brush that kind of looks like color pencils. So if I can get this to work, I think that will look pretty neat. And just to make it a little more interesting, something else that I have never combined with Posca pens before is Copic markers. I have used color pencils and Copic markers before together, but I think this will be an interesting combination. I have no idea if this will work together, so let's do a little swatching. My hair is everywhere. I am worse than the cats. So I think that my idea is that the Posca pens and the Copic markers will be the base, and then I'm gonna do the details with the color pencils. The paint markers and the alcohol markers are quite different from each other. Paint markers are opaque, while alcohol markers are more see-through. But what they both have in common is that they create a very even color. But with the alcohol markers you get a much more translucent look. So since the Posca pens are opaque, I can draw over the alcohol markers. Drawing over the Posca pens with a Copic, it certainly gives an interesting effect, but I don't think it is good for the nib because the alcohol is picking up the paint. And also, I think the Copics are smudging the paint markers anyways. And the color pencil, of course, works without problem on top of the alcohol marker. But let's see on the paint marker. Yeah, that actually works surprisingly well. So yeah, that's my little test. Now let's get into the drawings. Cats, lots and lots of cats. So PURRMAIDS are basically fish and cat combined, and I have drawn a few of them before, but what I haven't drawn before is a jellyfish PURRMAID. I think real jellyfish are creepy and a little bit nasty, to be honest. I am not a fan, so I was determined to make this jelly PURRMAID cute and fabulous. I thought the body of the jellyfish would be like a poofy skirt of the PURRMAID, and then I just went from there, I suppose. I really love how the pose turned out. It looks very flowy and calm, just as I wanted. In opposite to my digital art, where I start with a line art and then I add in all the colors, I put down all the flat colors first and then I will go in with the line work and details using the color pencils, mainly because the paint markers would cover up the color pencils and the Copics would smudge them. I also had to plan out where I wanted the Poscas and where I wanted the markers, since I had to do the Copics first so I didn't smudge the paint markers. In traditional art you really have to do a lot of planning. So jellyfish are, well, jelly and see-through, so I thought it would be perfect to use the more transparent Copic markers on the main part of the jellyfish, and then I added some paint markers on top of that to make it a little more cohesive and to spread out all the different art materials. When I first tested out the art supplies in the beginning to see how they worked together, I used Prismacolor color pencils. I just thought that they would layer easier on top of the paint markers since they are a little more waxy and soft, and I think they worked really well when testing them out, but now when using them in this artwork, they barely work at all. They kind of just clumped up and looked streaky and weird, so I erased that as much as I could, and then I brought out my trusty old Polychromo color pencils instead, which worked a lot better, surprisingly. It is strange though, I did also test the Polychromo pencils on top of the Posca pens before I started, and they didn't work well at all compared to the Prismacolors, but now it is the opposite, I don't know. And the Polychromos aren't perfect either, but I still managed to add some details and line work, and I think it looks pretty neat. Lastly, I added a flat background using the Copic markers, or a Copic marker. I only used one color. I wanted to keep it fairly simple, but later when looking at it, I thought it looked a little too flat maybe, so I brought out my refill bottle of colorless Copic ink. This is just pure alcohol basically, and when added to colored alcohol ink, it will remove or dilute the color. So I created this bubbly pattern which makes it look a little more like underwater, and I really like it. Since I was making a series of PURRMAIDS, I wanted to make a few different shapes. I wanted to play around with the designs. So this PURRMAID is based off a betta fish, I think it's pronounced betta. They are really beautiful with these lovely flowy fins, and it comes in all different colors. I did struggle a little though with the anatomy of this fish. It got a whole bunch of fins, as fish does, but sometimes it kind of looks just like one big fin, but is many different, and it is a little confusing to be honest. But since I am drawing it in a more stylized and cartoony style, I simplified it a lot, and I think it turned out alright at the end. As I mentioned, betta fish comes in all the colors of the rainbow, so I could pick any color that I wanted, but I was trying to keep the other PURRMAIDs in the series in mind too, what would look nice together, and also what would make each of them stand out. So I went with blue and purple. I used some Copic markers at the edge of the fins just to give it this light and see-through look, and then I basically just used Posca pens on the rest of it. I wanted to bring in some warmth and tie it together with the previous drawing, so I also added in some yellow, which I used for the fins and also the inside of the ears of the cat, and I realized that this really made it look like Vaporeon with the yellow and the blue, which I didn't even think of when I made it, but now looking at it afterwards, it seems a little familiar. Then bringing in the color pencils and adding details and line work and texture, I still don't really know how I feel about using color pencils on top of the paint markers, because when it works it looks really nice, but most of the time the color pencils don't grip properly and they look waxy and streaky. And that is what's weird, that they sometimes work and sometimes they don't. Maybe different colors works better than other on top of the paint. They might be built up differently depending on the pigment, and maybe pencils with different formulas would work better. I should have tried out the Posca color pencils, maybe they would have worked better, I don't know. But I still like it, kind of. I like the texture that the pencil creates. Then I'm making a green background and I'm using the colorless ink here too to create this bubbly texture. My last little PURRMAID in this series is based off a koi fish. I've drawn some unusual shaped PURRMAIDs now, so I just wanted to make a straight up fish-like fish. And of course I had to give it a silly little blep face. The reason why I love drawing cats with their tongues out is because it reminds me of Sally, my cat. She has almost none of her front teeth left. She's doing just fine though, it isn't really bothering her, but it makes her often sit or sleep with her tongue out, and it is adorable. The color scheme for the two previous kitties I kinda made up myself, since you can still see what kind of fish it is just from the shape of it, but the koi fish has a very specific pattern and color, so I tried to replicate that in a more stylized manner, of course. Instead of black and brown spots, I used purple to tie it together with the previous pieces. I used a very bright obnoxious orange for some of the spots, which I later covered up and toned down with a more muted coral pink. For this one, I struggled a little where I wanted to bring in the Copic markers. I wanted to use it on the PURRMAID itself since I had done it for the two other ones, so I added a little shading and details on the fins and the white areas of the body. I really wish that the color pencils would have worked better than they did on top of the Posca pens. I can see the potential and sometimes they look great, but unfortunately for the most part they look kind of streaky and uneven. Sometimes they grip and sometimes they don't. I have color pencils from other brands too that are different formulas that I will try out later and see if they will work better. But if I really want to experiment further with trying to replicate my digital art style in a traditional way, I do think that gouache, which you can also get flat even colors with, combined with color pencils would work a lot better. Posca paint is acrylic, I think, and acrylic is plastic, and plastic is very hard to draw on with color pencils. I know that color pencils works great on watercolors, and gouache is basically thicker watercolor, so maybe that's a win. I will definitely try it out. But yeah, here we have my three little PURRMAIDs. I think the jellyfish and the koi fish might be my favorites. Which one do you like the most? Let me know. I really enjoyed experimenting with this, to me, new art supply combination. I struggled a little, but I feel like I have learned a lot. I do like the contrast between the solid paint markers and the more transparent alcohol markers. It was a fun experiment. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave suggestions what you would like to see in the future, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Keep drawing my happy cats. Bye!